Thanks so much for listening to the Salesforce Posse podcast, where I talk to Salesforce industry experts so we can learn on how we can move from a Salesforce admin and developer to a Salesforce architect. And today I'm going to be talking to Ian Gotts, who is founder and CEO of Elements.cloud. And we're going to go into a big deep dive into Salesforce Data Cloud. We're going to hear how he analyzes data from multiple systems to get targeted customer support in Data Cloud. We're going to dive into the complexities of Data Cloud, including data analysis, data governance, and architecture. We're also going to see on how Data Cloud is different from the core platform and the real focus that you need to put on in designing a Salesforce Data Cloud implementation. We're also going to look at career planning in the Salesforce ecosystem and what this means now Salesforce has really matured. So if you want to take your first steps into Data Cloud or want to learn what you should be focusing on in your Salesforce career, then I think you're going to get a lot of value out of what Ian Gotts has to say. So without further ado, let's go. So hi, Ian. Welcome to the Salesforce Posse podcast.
So thank you for inviting me.
Yeah, no, brilliant. So I think I always ask this to everybody right at the beginning is kind of like, how did you get into Salesforce initially? Because you're now founder and CEO of Elements.cloud, obviously cool tool that's used by many people around the world for business process mapping and stuff like that. But where did it all begin?
Okay, so I started being a customer of Salesforce back in 2001. So I was running another software company called Nimbus Partners, and we were a process mapping software company. It was process mapping for highly regulated organizations. So we were the global standard at Nestle or AstraZeneca, people like that. We had teams around the world, and CRM was basically desktop applications where we were just trying to share contacts. It was horrible. Anyway, so Salesforce came along and said, there's this thing called the cloud. Although, of course, it wasn't called the cloud then. I think it's called ASP or Software as a Service. But the proposition there was one central database, everyone around the world, opening up a new country was easy. You just gave people access. But bear in mind, it was really limited. It had 5 objects. That was all.
Yeah.
This was early days. But you could build stuff. So we built out, I think, 300 custom objects to support all the different functionality around the
Blimey.
So I think I was the first customer it wasn't Dreamforce, it was the first London event. So there were 100 people.
Yeah.
3 customers, I was one of them, and Mark. And that was it. So, I mean, that was very, very early beginnings. And it was quite interesting. We took a risk. I mean, people like Gartner said, this won't continue. No one will put their data in the cloud. Financial services will never put data in the cloud. And look where we are now. It's been a remarkable journey.
Yeah, it's just a monster that keeps on growing, really, which kind of comes on to next, what's next for Salesforce and this whole world of Data Cloud, right? And AI and all that kind of new shiny stuff that people are getting involved in. And I kind of really wanted you on the podcast because you've actually really been getting your hands dirty with Data Cloud. Yeah.
Yes,
and understanding how it works, and also all the challenges around it. So I think the first up is like, why did you see Data Cloud as a kind of a value proposition for your company? And why did you see it as, actually, this is something we need to implement?
Well, the first thing is, I mean, Elements.cloud has got, we've got multiple systems. We don't just have Salesforce. We use HubSpot for marketing, Docebo for training, our academy. We've got something called Intercom for chat. We've obviously got Salesforce for lots of capability. Now, trying to get a picture of someone who is, they've come to the website or they've been to a webinar, but then they've done a training course. But then we've also got something called Gainsight, so we see what people are using inside our product. Being able to pull all those together, that says, okay, Francis, you're a consultant, so I see you've got a consultant license. You've not used that functionality, but you attended the webinar and you've done the training course, but you're still not using it. So what help can we give you? Rather than spamming you with emails going, look, new feature, we can be a lot more targeted and actually support the customer. I mean, it's the promise was always customer 360, and I think Data Cloud is now fulfilling that promise. in a way that can be done with clicks, not code. And I think that's really important, because you could have done this before, but just the effort of building those integrations and trying to get all the data in one place and harmonized it was really hard. And Data Cloud, the promise there is actually making that possible.
Yeah, and doing it at scale at the same time, I think, which is
and also being able to maintain it. I mean,
yeah,
we're continually evolving all those other systems. If every time you evolve them, something breaks, then the overall maintenance is huge. But if again, it's easy enough to maintain and make sure that proposition continues to work. And I picked off just one proposition. There are multiple use cases, but the deal is pick one first and get that working.
Yeah, exactly. And then see the value of it and then learn and move on, right? But I think it's also, in the world of AI and getting data together, it's you're needing to get data together to be more insightful, to use the more, AI models and things like this at some point once we decide how it's going to solve different problems within an organization. But getting the data in one place at the start is obviously, the first point of call. So what have you found in your kind of journey that has been more of a challenge, or things that you've kind of gone, oh, actually, this is, different to a regular, hey, let's just do some customization in the core platform?
I mean, you picked on what's a really interesting point. I mean, when I said we started with sort of 5 objects, again, that was, you can see how Salesforce has evolved. Obviously, something like Flow is almost as powerful as Apex. I know it isn't, so I'll lose all the developers here. But actually, you think, you think about the capabilities we've now got in Flow. The level of sophistication that Salesforce has built has been it's been a sort of an evolution, and you can kind of get away with, oh, I'll click this, I'll see what happens, and sort of the concept of an accidental admin where someone's thrown in and said, work out what this is and make sense of it. What we're seeing in this evolution is Salesforce is now clearly a very complex, that's unfair, it is complex, but it's also a very comprehensive platform. You can do anything with it. It's just not one product, it's multiple products. It's the core platform, it's MuleSoft, it's Tableau, and so therefore they're aiming at a more sophisticated, a larger, more strategic customer. So that's the first thing. The deals are getting bigger, and you can see Salesforce focusing on real enterprise challenges. So I think that's a big change, and that means that the skills that we all need to have, we kind of should have applied them when things were small, but you really need to apply things like in architecture and business analysis. That you really need those skills now. You can't just go, oh, I'm about to make a strategic change. Let's see what happens. So you need good business analysis. You need, metadata is now being talked about by Salesforce. You need a metadata. A lot, absolutely. But it's the differentiator. It's the secret sauce, which is if you've got metadata, then you can use clicks, not code, to go and start to make changes. And now things like, so you said Elements is process mapping, but it is, but it's also metadata management. The whole piece we do in terms of helping you manage that metadata. That's suddenly
impact of
becoming
change.
more and more. Yeah, indeed. How do you track changes? How do you actually understand the risk of making changes in a more complex system? And I think we've seen this over time. And I will get to the answer to your question in a moment, but I think we need to get the evolution first, which is it's getting more and more complicated. And you didn't get punished by it, or you didn't get punished by it visibly. And what I mean by that is, if you built stuff that no one really used, then it's not going to hurt you too badly. It's interesting. We've got something called the Change Intelligence Research Series because we're calling Elements a Change Intelligence platform. And the data coming out of the research series is really interesting. So we synchronize about 50,000 orgs a month. We've analyzed 1.3 billion metadata items. So we've got good data to work from. 50% of all custom objects, on average, never get used.
Okay, doesn't surprise me, to be honest. But it's like,
but it's not an adoption issue. It's not they got used a bit and now we don't use them anymore. They never got used. There's no data at all. If I look at fields, 40% of fields on custom objects never ever get populated. 43% of fields on standard objects, and on average, if you go to the core objects, like event, it's 88% of the custom fields on an event. And those core objects of contact account, it's still over 50% of fields never get used. And then the
Bonkers.
last stuff, I mean, there are loads of metrics in the report, and you can go and find it from. If you go to Elements.cloud under our resources, you can find the ebooks for change intelligence research series. But the other one we looked at was the number of fields on a page layout. On average, 150 fields on an opportunity.
Wow.
Yeah, exactly. When all the data from the UX experts, of which I'm not one, is 7 fields is what you should be having.
I know, it's bonkers. I think, and to be honest, I think like the evolution of the platform, like being able to drive seeing the right fields at the right point in time of the record, have always been a bit of a challenge because you're only kind of limited to a page layout, right? But now there's no excuse, right?
Exactly.
Yeah, and actually showing the right fields at the right time in that evolution of the different records. But yeah, it's just bonkers, isn't it? And even if you think about, I did it, and this is like several years ago at Dreamforce. I did a talk on just how many standard objects there are, and it was literally over 1,000 objects, standard objects in the platform. And it's like, even if you just ignore custom objects and just think of the standard ones, right? And anybody could essentially create a relationship and start putting data in them or whatever. It is pretty bonkers, you know?
So that, but see, none of that's killed you. The fact you've actually got those extra fields, it slows stuff down, kills agility. Maybe you run out of fields because you want to go and install a managed package and the opportunity is maxed out with 500 fields. I get all that stuff, but it doesn't go, sorry, you've got to start again.
Yeah, exactly. And also, if it becomes a process of understanding what fields are not being used and removing them and reducing it down. So there's ways out of it, right?
There are. I mean, obviously, Elements.cloud is a core part of that. But I think what the question you asked at the beginning of this, and it seems a long time ago now, but the question you asked at the beginning was, what about Data Cloud? Data Cloud actually, I think, is more than an evolution. It's actually a big step change because it now requires you to have done, first of all, understand what you're doing first. So our experience is you can't just start going in and clicking because it's a new set of terminology, it's a new set of concepts. Even when you've got the Data Cloud certification, you're still going, okay, I still need to think quite hard about this. So the first thing is you've got to learn first and use those free credits as a way of learning. Don't go, I want to use the free credits to go and for my production. You're going to need to use those to build something which you're probably going to have to throw away just because you're learning. So that's the first thing. The second thing is, and Salesforce is telling everybody this, it's 80% planning, 20% execution. And if I think about sort of traditional Salesforce at the moment, it's 80%.
100% doing, isn't it?
100% doing, which it never ought to be. It always ought to be plan first before you build, but it never was. With Data Cloud, it has to be planned first. You have to map out, what's the requirement, what's the end-to-end process you're trying to automate. Then what data? I need to do data analysis. I need to build ERDs to understand where the data is coming from. Because you've got DSOs, which are source objects, DLOs, which are data lake objects, DMOs, which are the data model objects. So there's a way of getting the data from your core systems visible to your Salesforce system so you can use it. And the challenge is that if you get any of those things wrong, and there are a whole set of new terms like segmentation, there are lots of things that you do, steps you go along, and if you get any of those wrong, you've got to unpick it and start again.
Yeah.
You can't.
And I think it's also even
just change that. No, you can't. You've actually got to unpick it. So there's actually suddenly you've got to do some of this stuff right, planning up front, and that I think is a big shift, which is great because for those people who want to lean in, Data Cloud's the future, and there's a real opportunity to build a career there.
Yeah, absolutely. But then it opens things up, like even with the DMOs and DLOs and the transformation of harmonizing that data, it kind of gets you so far, right? But it may be that you need to transform that data somehow outside of Sales Data Cloud before you get it in. And I think that then opens up, well, how, right? Is that MuleSoft? Is that an ETL tool that we've already got? And understanding the challenges of data transformation, right?
Yeah. But also think about this is a cross-functional project. So we want some data here so the customer success team can do a better job. but they're asking marketing to do some different stuff in HubSpot. Oh, I want that data in a different way. So there's development in HubSpot. There's work in our training systems. So we're going to our training team and going, well, I know you had some priorities to make those changes, but we want those changes made. So suddenly this is now, think about the concept of a center of excellence, where you're trying to, you've got an overall plan, you've got a vision, but you're collecting those different stakeholders. These projects are more complicated. It's not just the sales team or the RevOps playing with some data. Actually, that you need to go and work out how you're going to collect the data from other systems. And as you said, do I need to make changes to my core systems, think about data quality, data governance before the data comes in, rather than using the credits that are associated with Data Cloud and doing all that inside Data Cloud? Because I think we've both thought about something but haven't actually said it out loud. Data Cloud is paid for by consumption. It's not licenses.
And it is the big shift of Salesforce, I think. Yeah.
Oh, yes.
And I think this is what I've been quite, when they first announced Hyperforce, I was like, this is awesome, right? Because rather than having a kind of a user-based licensing, actually, and getting charged quite a lot for different feature pricing and stuff like that, hey, we can now literally go more consumption-based pricing and actually just pay for what we use and hopefully get access to a lot more functionality like Data Cloud. But because it's consumption-based pricing, you only pay for what you use. But obviously that comes with other challenges, right?
Well, you said, is there a return on investment? I have no idea. Okay, because until I've done the planning and done the data volumetrics, I've no idea
worth it.
How much this is going to cost. So it's again, the emphasis is on planning, and I know people are going, "Oh, really? I wanted to start building." There's huge power, but I think that getting some of that stuff done correctly up front means that the chance of success is high. If you don't do any planning, you will never implement Data Cloud. You'll get frustrated, which is you've done all this work and then you've got, for some reason, there are no records have come through. You're like, well, why? I have no idea why. Maybe it was the segmentation was wrong, or maybe actually you actually hadn't configured one of the data sources correctly, or the reverse, which is, and I heard a customer the other day made a small change, pulled more data in, $250,000 bill the next month. Like,
exactly.
That wasn't what we're planning.
It's almost like when I think of it, it's like I'm kind of just waiting for Salesforce to bring out, like, you got the AWS and Azure pricing calculators where you kind of put in all the resources you want. I'm just waiting for that to come out for Salesforce, right? So you're kind of calculating your cost. Because also then do you want to then, like, it came back to that transformation question, like, do you actually want to consume credits and transform it in Data Cloud when actually you could spend a little bit of time changing the way the tool or the HubSpot or whatever it may be works, such that the data comes in a more harmonized way, so you're not consuming those credits, which may be in the longer term more cost effective.
So exactly, but it may be actually there's a ton of really bad data in there you just don't want to bring in. So again, it requires you to understand some data analysis and go, okay, what have we actually got here? And again, I only want to bring in, so pick the example we started with. I only want to bring in, say, consultants. So how many of those have we got, and where's the data held? And okay, so there's no point bringing that data in. If we brought in stuff from Gainsight, every time anybody clicks around our application, we're starting to collect data. There are millions, if not billions, of records. We don't need all of those. So what would we do before we brought that in to actually bring in decent data? And that's a conversation we're having at the moment, which is, okay, what level of data do you genuinely need to be able to make those decisions? And it's a trade-off. And then where are we going to do that harmonization? Is it in Salesforce? Is it in Data Cloud? Is it in an external system? Is it custom code? So there are a number of quite important decisions getting made in terms of your Data Cloud strategy. And I think we're all learning. This is fairly new for Salesforce as well. The concepts aren't new. I mean, the concepts of a customer data platform, the concepts of building massive systems and moving data around, none of those are new. So we're not making this up from first principles, but I think they're very new maybe to the Salesforce ecosystem. And I think that's both a challenge for people going, hang on, I've just got my cert now, what do I do next? So I think if you're in a small organization, maybe Data Cloud, there are just too many skills that a solo admin would need to pick up.
Yeah.
The positive, though, is this is opening up huge opportunities in large organizations where they'll be building larger teams and you need Salesforce. So I think the world's going to move to where you will have a career path inside a company because suddenly there are bigger teams, there are more opportunities. So I see this as actually a good time. And data cloud is something you need to be learning. You need to understand the concept. It's different terminology. There's a different set of skills that you need to go and learn. It's almost like learning Salesforce all over again, I'd suggest for many people.
Yeah, and I think it is, and I think also going back to that, planning. Like even when I've been creating some bits in Data Cloud, and there's some things where you set it up wrong to start off with. That's it. You got to clear it all out and start again. And there's certain gotchas in there at the moment that were, and even actually they've changed. Obviously it's grown up, but it was even like just field types. There was just a handful of them. There was no Boolean field type, right? Which also made challenges of, is it yes, no, true, false? You're harmonizing, but there's several different versions of true, false, or even Pardot where it's yes, no, and not anything. Null. So yeah, I think it all comes back to that. Obviously, that's now they have got a Boolean field type, which makes things a lot easier. But again, it's understanding that kind of knowledge that you may not necessarily need to know as part of a core platform development, right?
Yeah, and I think you should have known these things. If you don't know if you're not good at business analysis, if you can't build an entity relationship diagram, if you can't draw a data flow diagram, I mean, they're core skills that you need. I mean, if you think you're going to forget Data Cloud, you're going to implement AI. Okay, same problem. It's about data.
Exactly.
It's about data governance. It's about architecture. Unless you can, if you can't build an entity relationship diagram and understand what data you've got there, these are core skills you're going to need. Fine. Yes, if you've got 5 users, you can kind of muddle away in a corner, but Salesforce isn't selling 5 licenses. It's selling 50,000 licenses. They are moving into more and more complex implementations. I always say to people, if they say, oh, well, Salesforce isn't strategic for us, there's an account exec in Salesforce determined to make it strategic for you. So, and Salesforce is so powerful. It's an expensive product if you're only using it as sort of a glorified Rolodex or a spreadsheet on steroids. You need to have all that power to make the most of those licenses. So it's incumbent on all of us to build those skills.
So what would you say if I'm wanting to get into Data Cloud? Where would you advise is the first stop shop of learning more or in Data Cloud?
Well, I mean, obviously Trailhead will start to give you a sense of what Data Cloud is. And I think it's important to realize that Trailhead almost shows you what you don't know, not what you do know.
Yeah.
You start reading Trailhead and go, oh, there's a whole bunch of new concepts here I haven't heard of before. So that will get you started. If you need to get through to where you're a Data Cloud, you've got that certification. Even if you've got that certification, and we've got a number of people on the team who've got it, they're still going, oh, this is hard. Oh, so there is quite a lot. So you need to get that done.
Because I did the certification as well, and it is a kind of like, it's almost like the foundation of how everything fits together almost, not the next level of actually the challenges you're going to get. And even it doesn't even kind of really go into credits and that kind of side of stuff either. So I think and knowing actually what's going to cost more versus something else, right, not in there at all. So I think, and those obviously are key answers you need when you're building that Data Cloud design, right?
Yes. I know there are some Data Cloud workshops or some boot camps that are happening around the world. There's one in Chicago just recently.
Yeah.
They're now running those. It's like maybe it's 2 days. And again, it's focusing quite a lot on the implementation, the 20%, not the planning, the 80%. But they do emphasize how important it is to do planning. We're writing a series of ebooks charting our journey, and the first one's out, which is all about sort of the documentation, just the different planning documents that you need before you even get started. So that was book 1. Book 2 was all around the data strategy, data analysis piece. Book 3 is about sort of how you make that work, and book 4 is actually how you might then move it on to AI. So we're charting our journey as we go along. So the first book's out, which is all around the documentation that you need. And clearly we're excited because that's what Elements does. It's all the documentation you need. It's It's the requirements, it's process maps, it's data flow diagrams, it's ERDs, it's metadata dictionaries. In a number of ways, our
Impact
time has now come.
analysis, change. Yeah.
Yeah. So all the
Yeah.
things that you need to start to track all this and then build a user story which makes the changes. Um, and
And actually, that's why actually with Data Cloud as well, I was actually pretty impressed that actually, usually when they bring out a new tool, it's like the object model's all separate from the core platform and it's different. Whereas actually this is a lot more integrated into the core platform than I was expecting, right? Which means that all these tools like Elements Cloud and stuff will naturally just see Data Cloud, right?
yeah, absolutely. So all those DMOs and DLOs and this, they will all appear in the core. They they're not sitting inside the core platform, but they're visible
No.
through the metadata API.
Mm.
So the way Data Cloud was, you install it in an org, so it needs somewhere to live. It's like another big managed package, so it has to live somewhere.
Yeah.
But the really cool thing they've done is they've made all that metadata visible through the API, which means it then appears in our metadata dictionary. So then you can
Yeah.
start documenting it because there's nowhere to document it. So there are standard, I think, 100 and something DMOs which you should be using. But then if you start building your custom ones, a DMO and then fields, you need to try and document it somewhere, but also the dependencies. So, okay, well, that DMO is related to that thing in Salesforce core. Oh, and also we've now used that in a flow, or we've used that in Apex. And one of the things that happens here is you've now got a field and you make a change to a field. Before you went, oh, it's a field on a page layout, or I think it's in a flow somewhere. I mean, you shouldn't be guessing. But now you could be making a change to a field which is having an impact in Data Cloud in terms of an AI decision. It won't break. Suppose, let's take an example. You've got a field which is an amount field, okay? And you're US based, so it's only dollars. And then you go, well, actually, we're now multi-currency, so we're going to make that field hold dollars and sterling and euros. And we've got a separate field called currency, okay? So you now start putting, you make that change, that's fine. You've changed the page layout and people all understand it. AI didn't know. AI is just pulling that number and making decisions. There's no relationship between the currency field and the amount field. There's an implied dependency there. If you don't tell anybody, AI is making decisions. Yeah, it's cool, but it's 10% off. It's now got euros, or it's 20% off because it's now got sterling. I mean, there are some huge implications of if you don't document this, it won't break. It will just get stuff wrong, and you may never know.
And I think it's also even with just. I think also it's so easy just to hook up to the Salesforce API anyway, right? Oh, I've just built, our internally built tool. Yeah, we'll just hook up, send stuff in. But the people in Salesforce have no idea that, it's pushing this. Well, they might know there's an integration there, but may not know the implications of, can I put this validation rule in here or not? What happens if I switch dupe management on, right? And it's knowing the detail of that as well, right? The fields and down to that level of, I've changed this field is a currency field, but you don't know what it's a number field, but you don't know what the currency is and stuff like that, even to that level of detail, right? Which could kill reports and goodness knows what else in other source systems.
Yeah. And it's interesting, the documentation is not what. Okay. I know it's a field called NDA. I need to know why it's there. Yeah. So I think people get hung up on the documentation. AI could write documentation because it can go through and look at all the fields. No, you need to know why. You need to know why I've done this. I know, is it part of an application? Why this NDA field? Oh, the NDA field is there when a customer signs a contract and there's an NDA check clause in there. That's when we check this, and we also need to check it, review it every 6 months. So that's a lot more than the NDA field is checked when an NDA is in place or not in place. I mean, there's so much more than just what the field is. You need to know why it's there, or why a flow is being used. Because when you come back in 6 months' time and you're on the next use case, or 3 months' time, and the next use case for Data Cloud, and you're now touching those DMOs again, or you're touching those fields again, you don't want to have to go and try and work out from first principles and try and work back through the segmentation and then it's dealer and work my way back and try and work out why this thing works. You need to be able to go, okay, yeah, I got it. Because it may not even be you, it may be a different team doing this.
Like
suddenly
following a
all
piece of
those
string,
core
isn't it?
skills are really important. Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah. And I think also we haven't really touched on it, but also the other challenges that, around just security, right? You know, we're dumping data into data cloud from all these source systems, and you've got that potential exposing of sensitive data, right? And how do you even manage the security of the fields and the data that are coming in and changes in that as well?
Yeah, and again. The thing is, don't pull all the data in. You need to think about what data
Yeah.
you bring in. I mean, I back in 1986, I was the IT director of the DSS, Department of Social Security. So a huge organisation paying all the benefit payments to everyone in the UK, and we needed to check. We got multiple systems, and we wanted to check, get a data dump, so we could actually check names from one core system against another core system. Person didn't know what they were doing. Apparently, they did a dump the entire database, name, address, passwords, bank details, and so on, onto a CD, stuck it in the
Right.
internal mail, and it,
Oh.
and it it got lost. It never arrived. So back, I mean, fine. That's a scary example. I'm sure it's ended up at a car
Yeah.
boot sale somewhere where someone's going, "Oh, I've
Yeah.
got a CD with. Oh, hang on, I've got everyone in the UK." And it's that kind of stuff where knowing how to do. All we needed was a very small subset of data. Fortunately, it never appeared, and there was never an issue. But the point is that
Yeah.
there are a set of implications which are now far broader when you start thinking about it. As you said, we're putting marketing data in, or if there are credit card details being pulled in from an e-commerce system, do you really need those? I know it's available, but actually, do you really need that to make the decision?
Yeah.
So planning being very clear about the use case and the minimum amount of data you need to make those decisions, again, is important, because the less data, the less security issues there are.
So what do you think are the kind of the core skills that people should know if they wanted to getting into data cloud? So not just learning data cloud, what else do we need to know?
Well, first of all, you need to get to understand what the terminology around data cloud is and understand the concepts.
Yeah.
And there are some great videos out there. We talked about Trailhead. We talked about data cloud certification. Ines Garcia's got a great Udemy course, which
I
people
did
are
it.
raving about.
Yeah, amazing course, really good.
There you go. So you've got that. But I think some of the other things that you need to understand is core business analysis. So I know, how do I capture requirements? How do I map business processes? So for the end-to-end use case. So Trailhead's got courses on UPN, Universal Process Notation. Obviously, you can come to the Elements.cloud. We've got an academy. There's tons of stuff that we've written about how to map processes. Then, I mean, ERD, data analysis, how you actually build an entity relationship diagram. The Trailhead courses are fairly light, so you need to go and find your own training. Again, we've got a reasonable one on our academy about what an entity relationship diagram is, how you draw it. Obviously, Salesforce, the architecture website, there are lots of ERDs there for the core system. So go to the gallery on architect.salesforce.com, start looking at some of these data models, and so you understand what's actually happening there.
Oh, actually,
What
yeah,
else?
because I use Lucidchart a lot and pull the templates into there and just customize them, right, to
Yeah.
your needs, so you can describe ERDs to your organization.
Yeah, so the cool bit is Elements.cloud. We've got those templates. You can pull them into our product now as well.
Oh, yeah, exactly, yeah.
Yeah, okay. And then you've got, I mean, thinking about understanding data governance. Just so once you've now got, you've got what an ERD is. What's the data flow diagram? Again, you can draw those inside Salesforce diagrams. Has got a standard, so you can start to. So thinking about the different sorts of documentation that you need to go and build, and then the other piece is metadata dictionaries. So again, Salesforce has started talking about metadata, talking about metadata dictionaries. What is one of those? Okay, what do you expect to get in there? How and then how are you going to document those changes that you've made? So yeah, there's the metadata API pulls all that out, but there are a number of products out there, ourselves included, that will build a metadata dictionary, so you can start pull that all together. And we haven't even got into starting to implement data cloud yet. We're starting to
Yeah.
all those planning skills that we actually need.
Yeah, which is vital.
So they're the technical skills. There's the soft skills of asking questions, because you're now going to need to go and start having conversations with the marketing team. Okay, What data have you got? How's it work? So there is a lot of
Why do
soft
you need
skills.
it? What actions are you going to be, off that data? And I think,
Correct.
yeah, a lot of it's just asking why a lot, right?
Yeah. And there's a great book by Jody Herbeck, which actually is aimed at admins, but actually it's talking about lots of the soft skills, the questioning
Yeah.
skills. So I think that again, you need to summon your inner consultant, right? You're going to have to be a consultant who is navigating quite a political landscape, possibly, because you're having to talk to different teams about how this is all going to work. And the real bit of advice is keep the scope narrow to start with. But pick something which is to make it work. Narrow scope, doesn't touch everyone's data, not political. You want to be able to do this quietly, not in a corner, but you actually the first proof of concept needs to be something which adds a ton of value, but actually isn't going to have everyone questioning the data, requiring
Yeah.
huge system changes, pulling in a ton of data from lots of core systems.
Yeah, but it's kind of like proving that kind of one use case end-to-end journey, right?
Correct.
In a light way, so you've learned how to design it. And again, if it's small and light and it's wrong, then you can learn for the next time, right?
But it needs to be realistic as well. I mean, you can't go, oh,
Yeah.
I pulled it from a spreadsheet. I'm good. I'm golden here. And I go, but if you've got a data lake, like you've got Snowflake, or you've got
Yep.
AWS, ingesting data from that is a different challenge from pulling data in from somewhere where there's already a core connector. So yeah, you need to make sure the proof of concept generally has proved the concepts that you are going to have to apply to the systems that you've got. This is a really exciting time. I mean, we're making it sound really hard, kind of. But all of this stuff always was.
Yeah.
But it's
And
really
actually,
exciting
to be
about what you
honest,
can do.
Salesforce has taken a lot of the, again, as they always do, taken a lot of the hard abstraction away from, abstracted away of a lot of the hard stuff that are happening under the hood, right? And I know as it evolves, it's going to get easier, right? And you're going to, they'll.
No, it's not.
Oh, sorry. Yeah, it's going to be really hard all the time.
No. I think you're right. I think the implementation piece is going to get easier and easier.
Yeah.
But I
the
don't
complexity of what you're doing.
Yeah,
it's going to get
always
harder.
going to be hard because you've got multiple systems. So yeah, I think they
Yeah.
I was deliberately being difficult there, but I don't think we can go, oh, the upfront stuff's going to be easy. It's not. It's
No.
going to be. You've got to think. You've got to plan. You've got to analyze. The implementation, I think, will get easier, and it will become less complicated because I think at times, as you said, there are workarounds you've got to do at the moment because they're still filling in some of the gaps. That will become easier and easier.
And I think it's also, just little, the different models of the way, like Salesforce isn't a party model database, right? But then data model is more like that. So, and then there's other systems that are other, like even like HubSpot, right? It's just ingests. It's like a data hoover, I think, of hoovering at data all over the place, right? And it is very much that understanding what is actually really relevant. Don't want to take the entire activity feed of a prospect. It's cherry picking that key data that we want, right?
Yeah, I think if I roll the clock forward 5 years, and again, my crystal ball is as murky as anybody else's, but you could see that actually all Salesforce data sits in essentially data cloud. And the Salesforce that we know and love is just a UI on top of that. And maybe actually with AI, there's actually it's a very different UI sitting on top of it. So data cloud is now the core data strategy. And I think what Salesforce done is very clever in terms of exposing all that metadata. But we had a huge evolution of like 5 objects through to where we are now. We've now started data cloud, and I think there's now going to be a huge evolution about where data cloud now takes us. And I can understand why there's been a big emphasis on data cloud, because the AI piece doesn't work unless you've actually got decent data, and data cloud is starting to harmonize that. And we'll see AI being applied more and more. Actually, the more data it's actually got to work on.
Yeah, and I think also it's like, you even now, you're going into the world of unstructured data and bringing that into data cloud, which is again another level up, right? Also the oh god, what's it, zero copy integrations to Snowflake and things like that, which again is just another level again. And I think it's just gonna, continually grow. And yeah, I think AI and UIs is going to be the biggest disruptor, I think, for the Salesforce platform. But yeah, we see how everything pans out.
I think for people listening, they could go, hang on, this is completely overwhelmed. I'm fine. I've just got my admin cert, and
Yeah.
and this
And you're telling
is
me Salesforce is dead already in
no, but
creating
it's not. The
UIs?
train is accelerating away from you, and all you can see is the red tail light. And I think
Yeah.
whilst that's a natural concern, I think the point is that as Salesforce becomes more important to organizations, you'll see teams of 10, 15, 20, or 100 people inside an organization who are part of the Salesforce team, which means don't think of you, I've just got my cert, right, find myself a solo admin job. I think what you should be doing is, how do I join teams where Salesforce is being used, where I can be a specialist in that team, rather than being a generalist going, I need to know everything to do with the core platform, I need to know data cloud, I need to do analysis.
Yeah.
You've got sort of multiple hats and you're trying to do all of those. That's enormously stressful. I'd hate to be the solo admin in an organization. I think we're moving away from that to where there are teams, and you can actually find your role as part of a team. And that means there's a career path because you can grow inside that team.
But also, I think it is, the day of the generalist, I think, is kind of dead, really, or dying. Yeah, it used to be there where it's like Salesforce was this box, right? It's learning it. You are the generalist of Sales and Service Cloud because that's it. Yeah, or even just Sales Cloud initially. Whereas now, we're hitting that maturity of Salesforce where, SAP was in the same boat, right? Where they've now got lots of different clouds and people are specializing into different clouds and being kind of influencers in that. And therefore, when people want somebody with data cloud in financial services or somebody with marketing cloud in this other industry, those people that just all are shouting that technology in that industry are the ones that are going to get those jobs, right? And I think this is, especially with data cloud, yeah, it's finding those teams where it's like, yeah, this is my natural fit. This is what actually I quite like data and just mashing data and get the analysis on it, and actually, yeah, I want to do more of this, right? And finding the teams and opening up those cases. And even like, it does integrate to other platforms, right? Even with AI, it's, Azure AI, learning Azure AI, AWS AI, building your own kind of models, if your data's to that scale, right? And playing around, or even just, transformation in the cloud, but in Azure and AWS rather than in MuleSoft. So you can kind of be that expert for, actually, yeah, how do we ingest this data, do that transformation somewhere else that potentially might be cheaper than data cloud, or solve some of the challenges you've got with security, or whatever it may be.
So I think with all of this, it's an exciting time for people, but with any change, it's scary for lots of people. I think the important point you made was that you can't be generalist. You need to start thinking about how you specialize, or you build a set of skills, and then work out what that is. Try and work out. Talk when you're going to these events. Go and talk to other people about what's your career path been. What are you specializing in? Anyone says, "Oh, I do Salesforce." I mean, that's
What
not
does
a
that
thing
mean
anymore.
anymore? Yeah.
Like, I do computers. You okay? Right.
Yeah, no, yeah.
So yeah, it's way broader than that. So I think now's the time to sit back and go, okay, well, what am I passionate about? What am I going to say? Well, let's pick. What am I passionate about? Pick an industry. So you need some industry specialization. What am I passionate about in terms of, is it more technical on the development side, or is it actually more on the business side? So it's more business analysis. Is it data? So start to hone in on sorts of some of the skills which you're passionate about, and then you can start to find organizations where they've got bigger teams where they're looking for that specialist. And I think that's the future of this ecosystem. Specialists
And I think,
finding really good roles with a career path inside an organization.
yeah, absolutely. And I think I'd add to that, which would be, I think for any role, it's really kind of understanding, even at a light level, that kind of strategy and business analysis bit, to understand why you're doing something and if it's going to give value to the organization, and then basically be able to ask, well, why am I doing this? And making sure it does align up. And if it doesn't, you can kind of call it out, which again is going to add great value to your organization as well. So I think, yeah, even at a light level, kind of strategic piece and analysis is kind of, I think, key, which kind of aligns into, designing what you're doing, because you've got to align it into the strategy, the goals of the organization and the requirements, right? So I think that's a piece as well that's kind of really important.
And it almost brings us back to the very beginning, which is, you said, where did we start? I mean, I've been on my soapbox talking about the importance of business-led change for, we're working out 37 years ago was the first time I drew a process diagram when I was working for Accenture. And that hasn't changed.
No, yeah.
Understand how that business works. Now, clearly there are some advances. Elements GPT, you can give it a script, or you can give it an image, and it will draw a process diagram. We're using AI. It'll look at an existing process diagram and tell you how it could be improved. That's just making stuff faster and better.
Yeah.
But the core things of how does this work, we're back to those sorts of things are becoming really important. And none of this is a difficult skill to learn. And there's plenty of training out there. But I think it starts with, okay, what do we want to go and do? As you said, ask the questions about why are we doing that? And then you can build on the back of it. And I think that will, any of these things, even if you didn't do Data Cloud, everything we've talked about will make your own Salesforce implementation better. Business analysis, documentation, data analysis, all of that will actually make your implementation better, whether it's preparing for Data Cloud or preparing for AI. We can't have 50% of every object you built never being used. That's just such a waste of everyone's time.
An effort of building and analysis, and
but part of that is being able to go back and fight for, I'm not going to start building unless I've really understood. And I think there's this rush to, it's Salesforce, you can just build it. Yeah, you can, but should you? And I think we need to get this mantra of, I'm only going to build the right thing. So I need to make sure I understand what I'm building first, and push back on, just make a change. No, don't just make a change. Let's really understand it, and maybe reject it and go, no, I'm not going to build that because we've worked out there's a better way of doing it. So I think there's quite a lot of pressure on people to just start building, and you need to go, no, I'm not going to do that. Well, you've got a perfect answer with Data Cloud, which is, I'm not going to build it because if we go try and build it too quickly, nothing will ever happen.
Nothing will work.
We need that mindset for how we just build core systems.
And I think, and also, if you really want to identify that, is when you see these requirements coming in, and it is, you need to create a workflow, or you need to create a field here, or a validation. That isn't a requirement. That's a solution, right? And knowing, actually, no, okay, you want to create that, fine, but why? What is the actual goal? And actually, I was on a call, I had some juniors on the call with me, with a client, and they had this, big elaborate thing that they wanted to do. We walked all, and they said, yeah, we want to do this, and all these changes. We started going through it all and unpicking it all, of why they want to do that. And actually, they had it already all in Salesforce. It was just, and it was just looking at it in a different way, right? And go, well, you've got it there, you've got that there. You're just not using, or we haven't got the reports there to do it, or whatever. They didn't need to do anything at all, right? Always really, really valuable. And you can be as junior as you can. Do not be afraid of asking why. If somebody just tells you to do something, just ask why. And what's the value that this brings to the organization? Because I'm trying to learn and I'm trying to improve my skills. Just put it as a training, context around it if you're a little bit nervous about it. But definitely keep asking questions, because it's the best way to learn.
And the best way to actually work out that why is go, let me help you. Help me understand why you need it. Let's work out what the business processes we're trying to do. And you either get an existing process diagram out if you've got one, or if you haven't, start drawing one. And as you start drawing, they go, oh, okay, right, okay. And back to your example. So they go, oh, we've already got it. We have. Or as you map it out, you go, yeah, I know you said you wanted a new pick list value, but actually what you don't need, what you actually need, which worked out, is actually we need to add, a new record type, or there may be a different requirement, or maybe what they ask for generally is what they need. But think of the process map as the validation of that requirement, so you can then turn it into, okay, now what should we be building? And it's quick to do. fine.
And it's
AI
quite
can draw
incredible
it.
sometimes the response you get from it. Like you'll create a diagram that's not been asked for, right? You
Yeah.
show it to them and like, oh, this is really useful, right? They can now see everything in one page, right? The process, But
There
yeah,
you go.
cool.
That's 38,
Okay.
38 years in. That's 38 years in one sentence. It's like, you
Yes.
go, wow. So yeah, senior management can work out what metrics. Now they understand the process. Developers and admins can work out what they should be building. End users use it for training. Auditors can use it for compliance. This is,
Yeah.
and then AI could use it to go, okay, what do I go? I can pull that, and I'll automatically build a user story off the back of it. These are
And if you're
really
in
powerful.
regulated industry, security can validate, for auditing and security compliance as well. So yeah. Okay. Is there anything you want to talk about? Because I've got one last question I always ask everybody.
Go on then.
You ready for this?
Yep.
Okay. If you could wind the clock back to some point in your past and you could give yourself a bit of advice, what point of time would it be and what advice would you give yourself?
Uh, I'd wind myself back to university where I lived in a bunch of guys with a band, and
Right.
as you can see, I've got I played bass in a cover band. I mean, I always think,
You do? Yeah, I know. Yeah, you're off doing gigs, aren't you? Yeah.
but if I back at university, if I joined that band and
Yeah.
gone follow your passion, and it's funny, isn't it? People say follow your passion. I did. I'm an engineer. I love building stuff, and I'm exactly where I should be. But I always go back and go. I never went, what else could I do? It was always like, you're an engineer, you must do engineering, and it's just been a natural progression. I don't, I don't regret anything. I'm where I should be. I'm very lucky in terms of the career path I've had. I've had a chance to do amazing things. But the question, which is, I'm now playing bass at 60 in a cover band. I mean, you look back and go, if I'd done that when I'd followed that passion when I was at university, where would we be now? Probably a very different world. But it's I think
Or
the
even
advice
just,
is,
or even not liking what you're doing as a bass player and not enjoying it because you kind of, maybe, I don't know, who
no
knows?
idea. I mean, I think part of it is I've been very good at listening to. Okay, well, I had an overall direction, and therefore I was every time I was making decisions based on where I'm trying to get to. I think listening to that inner self and actually spending a bit of time to step back and go, where do I want to be? I think you ask people about where they want to be, and they go, well, I don't want to be that. I don't want to be. No, I didn't ask you not. And it's a lot harder, I think, to plan where you want to be.
Yeah, and I found, I remember even just doing it in the moment, or even, I think it took me, I basically had a career break and went to New Zealand and learned to become a snowboard and ski instructor for 4 months. And that was, for me, brilliant to just completely disconnect and think about where I wanted to go, right? And what did I want to be? And I knew I was never going to be a ski and snowboard instructor, but I wanted to do a season and get something out of it, right? But yeah, for me, that was really good, just having that break and thinking about it. But also, I think if you're not enjoying what you're doing right now, and you're like, okay, but I know I want to go move to something else. Another thing I did in my career was just reduce, if you can, or ask. You never know, it might happen, but is reduce your hours down at where you're working, right? So I went from 5 days a week to 4 days a week, which allowed me to do something 1 day a week, which happened to be doing some e-learning. And then that turned into 160,000 students, right? And I think that's completely changed the way what I was doing during those 4 days a week, right? So it gives you that opportunity to learn and try things out, in the freedom of that extra day.
Yeah, I think someone made a lovely statement, which was, you feel like you're climbing the corporate ladder. Okay, so you're doing more and you're doing more, and you can see a progression. You need to make sure it's not leaning against the wrong wall.
Yeah,
You get
exactly.
to the top and go, this is fun. I'm now 20 years in, how long in, going, I could have done that, and now it's too hard to change. I think when you're in the early stage of your career, you can do pretty much anything. You've got fewer responsibilities. You have very few skills. You can take them in different places, and I think the earlier you can start to build that ability to go, let's do some planning rather than build your own plan rather than be part of somebody else's plan, and try and that's talking to other people. Fundamental. Get someone who can ask you the questions. Why are you doing that? Why do you want to do that? And start to build your own plan about where you can go. And some people don't want to be very detailed. They don't want their life mapped out. But every time you end up with a big decision, career-wise, it's nice to go, oh, that decision will take me in that direction. That's roughly where I want to go. Versus that one will end up taking me that way, and I don't want to be down in that hole. So I think having some overall career direction. And again, Salesforce is such a big ecosystem. You can stay in here and build a career quite happily, and have a whether you're a consultant or a specialist in an area, whether you're inside a company, there are so many opportunities.
Exactly. And it's going to go on forever. Like, people are still writing COBOL code, it's going to be here forever. But yeah, well, thank you so much, Ian. It's been an amazing podcast.
Thank you.
Yeah, it's been great. And hope to see you soon. Oh, also, you're going to be at London's Calling, sponsoring London's Calling. So if anybody, are you coming along?
Yeah, of course.
Oh, brilliant. So if anybody's coming to that, you can always have a chat with Ian there. And then where can people reach out to you if they want to reach out or contact
Ian at Elements.cloud, or find me on LinkedIn. Yeah, brilliant. My passion is about education. I'm always happy to talk to people. You'll find me at dreaming events, all the big Salesforce events. I'm speaking somewhere. But Ian at Elements.cloud. Come and find us.
Brilliant. Well, thanks so much. See ya.
Thank you.
Thanks for watching or listening to the Salesforce Posse podcast. Now, please, if you like or what you see or hear, then please rate this podcast in your podcast player, as it tells me that there are people out there that actually are listening to this and that it's useful to them. Also, it helps the podcast algorithms to kind of elevate the podcast in the different podcast directories, which will be really helpful for me as well. And finally, if you do have a question that you want to ask on the podcast, then head to salesforceposse.com/message and maybe you'll appear in the next podcast. But apart from that, thanks for listening, and until next time, ta-ta.